Hey guys, Taylor here with Reality Canine, and I got Mr. Jake today. Jake the cattle dog puppy. He's here for a 4-week board and train. Also forgive the nose strip. My allergies have been absolutely murdering me, and this is the only way that I can breathe right now, so you'll just have to deal with me looking a little silly. I wanted to talk in this video about genetics. There's this myth out there that has been pervasive in the pet dog world, and you've probably heard some version of it, which is it's all how you raise them, right? Your dog's proclivity for aggression or bad behavior, it's all how you raise them. And what's so weird to me about this myth is that we've known for 60 years now that that's not true, right? We being scientists, behaviorists, dog trainers, right? We've known for 60 years that that's not true. The landmark study that proved this beyond a shadow of a doubt was the Scott and Fuller study in 1965. It's a very famous study. If you've ever taken a Psych 101 class, you've probably heard of it. And over a period of years, these guys bred different breeds of dogs and had control groups and tried to see if that was true. If you could, by raising a puppy a certain way, have a Cocker Spaniel, for example, act more like a beagle. And like a resounding no was the answer, right? And they cohesively proved that, you know, it was the genetics that determined how a dog would behave, and they proved this over generations and generations and generations of dogs. And if you think about it to any level, it makes sense. There's a reason that we have different breeds of dogs. If you could just get a Labrador to act like a Belgian Malinois simply by how you raised it, there would be no point in having a Labrador or a Belgian Malinois, right? We would just have dogs. Now you might think to yourself, well, if the genetics of the dog matter so much, then what is the point of like dog training, for example? Wouldn't it be a better use of your time just to find a dog that fits your life, a dog breed that fits your life, and then find a really good breeder? And the answer to that is, like, side note, if you're the kind of person that really wants to minimize the friction that a dog would have in your life, then you should absolutely find a very good breeder for a breed that would fit your life. But the reason that we have dog training is to allow dogs to have clarity as to the choices they can make and to show them the right choices. Right? So if you're a human being, you actually understand this perfectly, right? There are a lot of things that we naturally want to do that we choose not to do because we know that it's not in our best interest. I'll give you an example. I naturally am not a social person. Like, I'm a total introvert, but I still choose to interact with people more than I have to on a daily basis because I recognize that it's in my best interest to do so, right? I want to run a dog training business. I want to, you know, have community and things like that. I have to make choices that go against my natural inclination. And dogs are just the same way, right? Like Jake here, when he came here, he's a cattle dog. He naturally wants to nip at things just because, right? And he had to learn, my hands are not one of the things that you can nip, right? Now, the key there to understand is that even though Jake understands my hands are not something he can nip, he's still a cattle dog. So, in my example, even though I can choose to interact with people, it doesn't mean I'm not still me, right? Even if you did all the training in the world with me, all the kind of conditioning, counter conditioning in the world, it's not going to change my natural inclination to rather be by myself, right? Or with, choice people. Similarly, me showing him not a good idea to bite my hands doesn't stop him from wanting to nip things. So what do we do? Well, this is where we get into a conversation about drives, okay? The temperament of your dog, the drives of your dog, meaning the things that he naturally has a internal desire to do. All of that is determined in the womb, right? It happens before the dog even takes its first breath. Jake was gonna be like this before he even opened his eyes, right? Like, what we have to do as handlers and owners of our dogs is to understand their genetics and to work with them. The reason that I say that is because so many people are causing themselves so much unnecessary conflict with their dog because they're trying to work against genetics. You are never, ever, ever going to train away genetics, not ever. And you might say to yourself, well, that's not true, Taylor. There's dogs that, wanted to fight other dogs, and they were trained to have inhibition and to not fight other dogs. No, they were trained to make a better choice. Their genetics will always be in them, right? Think about like an alcoholic. An alcoholic doesn't stop being an alcoholic when they stop drinking. They'll always, to some extent, have an inclination to do something. They just make a different choice. Now, likening every character trait of a dog to alcoholism is not the best metaphor because it implies that every trait of a dog is not productive, and that's not true. People have this fallacy of kind of what I mentioned in the beginning of bad behaviors, right? What's a bad behavior? Is jumping a bad behavior? Is nipping a bad behavior? Is aggression a bad behavior? Right? What if the dog is jumping for a ball? What if the dog is showing aggression because they're a police dog or because they're protecting you from an intruder? Right? What if they're nipping because they're working cattle? You get where I'm going with this, which is that it is the context and the handler that really determines if a behavior is advantageous for them or not. And it does us no good to label behaviors as bad because it implies that the dog is somehow misbehaving, when in reality, they've just been given no clear boundaries and they're doing what comes naturally to them, right? Like this is natural. I guarantee you if I brought one of my cats in here right now, he'd probably want to chase them. He has no idea that that's not something that I would like. He's just doing what comes natural. So these drives that our dogs have, we need to give them appropriate ways to fulfill them. If they have appropriate ways to fulfill their drives, then they won't make bad choices or unhelpful choices in other areas of their life. So for example, you have a dog that really wants to chase things. Well, you need to let him chase things. You need to let him chase a flirt pole or a remote control car or a ball. That way, it will be much easier for him to choose not to chase your kids, for example, right? Now, of course, there's more that goes into it than just that. He has to understand the boundary there. He has to understand the consequence for making the wrong choice. He has to be incentivized to make the right choice. But underneath all of that, if his drive is being satiated in an appropriate way, he'll be much more balanced. It will be much easier for him to make the right choice. There are dogs out there that have genetics that are not cohesive with your lifestyle. There's no dog that's a robot that's just gonna perfectly, like, out of the womb fit in with you and everything you do. But there are dogs that have genetics that are not cohesive to your lifestyle, and there are breeds that have genetics that may be more cohesive to your lifestyle. So people that love to go hiking, people that work cattle even, right? Cattle dog is a great choice. But people that are very sedentary, that just want a dog to hang out with on the couch, y'all might want a basset hound. Like, see what I'm getting at here? The biggest problems, and the problems that I think when an owner really can't overcome something, is when an owner looks at a dog that is a Corvette and wants that dog to be a Ram 3500. That's the best way I can describe it. Like, if you went up to a mechanic with your Corvette and said, hey, make this a Ram 3500, the mechanic would be like, what? That's not how that works. If you want a Ram 3500, go get a Ram 3500. But people all the time will take their Belgian Malinois to a dog trainer and say, he's biting everything, make it stop. No, that programming was installed before birth. That's not something that you can uninstall. That's not something that you can change. You can direct it into productive things, and you can give clarity and boundaries to the dog about what's okay and what's not okay, but the dog will still be the dog. Another area that this manifests is in aggression. Dude, you just like nailed yourself in the ribs. Ah! Good boy. Boundaries. There are a lot of reasons that aggressive behavior can be displayed by a dog. I have an article on my website that talks about how all aggression has both a cause and a goal, right? And different types of aggression have different types of causes and different types of goals. But there's always a genetic component to the behavior, right? All dogs can bite. Some dogs be more bitey than others. And it's very rare that that is a learned behavior. Normally, the dog has a genetic proclivity towards it, and then is reinforced to repeat the behavior again and again and again because the aggression gets them what they want. So if you take a dog that is fear reactive, let's say, okay, fear aggression, walk the dog down the street, anytime they see a stranger, they're woo, 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 on the end of the leash, right? And we know that it's fear aggression based on the dog's body language, the context in which it's occurring. The dog fundamentally believes, I need to show aggression so that that person goes away, doesn't mess with me. Well, what happens? Every time the dog goes and shows that behavior, either, they keep walking or the stranger goes away. Either way, they showed aggression and they got the result that they wanted, right? They reinforced the behavior. Now we can take that dog and we can show him, hey, this behavior, it's not allowed. I'm going to give you something else, something more productive to do. And maybe it's playing, maybe it's obedience, maybe it's whatever. But this behavior of, being reactive and showing aggression towards strangers, I don't allow it anymore. And I'm clear with you on that boundary, and I'm clear with you on the choice that you can make. Well, the behavior might go away. The dog might choose, I just totally whipped myself in the eye with this. The dog might choose to show a different behavior, which is the goal of the training, right? Does that mean that the dog is now the dog that anybody can walk up to and pet and say, oh my gosh, I love your dog, he's so great? No, 9 times out of 10, no. 9 times out of 10, no. That dog is still gonna be weary, spooked about strangers, but he's just learned he has to show a different behavior. Now we can change his perception to the greatest extent that we can, which is to show him that being around strangers doesn't lead to anything bad. Being around strangers can even lead to good things. That doesn't ever mean he's going to be the lab that wants, strangers to pet him. He's not going to seek that behavior, right? He's still going to be who he is. And it's still going to be in him to want to default to his genetics. So it's on the handler to, again, be clear about the boundary and show him it's in your best interest to do this instead. And then to give him outlets for his drive, right? Say you have a dog that has, dog aggression, okay? There's conflict in the home with other dogs. This is not like a full blueprint for handling aggression, by the way. I'm talking about a very specific topic. There's a lot of things that go into aggression plans and that I'm not getting into with this, but I'm talking about genetics. We can take that dog and we can show him boundaries, rules, put leadership in place, put appropriate management in place, the obedience that gives the control, counter condition with the dog, show him that, you get affection, they get affection, everybody, it's all good, right? Is that dog forever just gonna be like, I'm cool with that dog and everything's good, and you don't have to do anything? No, he's still who he is. He's still who he is. That's why I have a problem with the phrase aggression rehab. Aggression rehab. Because it, number one, implies that there's something wrong with your dog in the first place. And as I said, behaviors are not good or bad. They're in and of themselves just behaviors. They're just natural things that your dog wants to do when there's no boundaries, when he thinks it's the best choice for him, right? You just nailed yourself in the ribs again, dude. But if it's a problem for the owner, it's a problem, right? The other problem with rehab is rehab implies that you are returning something to its original state. You're making something whole, right? If I tear my ACL, I get surgery, I go to physical therapy for rehabbing my ACL. I am returning my ACL to its original state. With aggression, you're not rehabbing it, because the aggression always has a genetic component. And depending how strong that genetic component is, determines how committed that dog is to the aggression. Now, that is not to say that you cannot, quote unquote, fix aggression, but what does fix look like? Does it imply that the dog has an illness that the dog trainer is going to cure, and then the owner can take their dog and forevermore never have to do anything for the behavior never to resurface because the dog is cured? No, not at all, right? It's more that dog trainers that fix aggression, that actually fix aggression, not fake people who try and distract dogs with hot dogs and keep them under threshold and then inevitably recommend behavioral euthanasia. Trainers that actually fix aggression show the dog, this is the boundary, this is the contingent punishment that happens on this side of the boundary, and these are all the good things that happen on this side of the boundary. And you make it clear to the dog, and you make it so every single time, my guy, I'm not Santa Claus. You make it so that every single time that boundary is crossed, the dog is held accountable. With different dogs, with different types of aggression, they're different. Like I said, we're not talking about all the various details of how to fix different types of aggression, but my point is, it's always there. The genetics do not go away. You cannot train away DNA. You cannot train away DNA. So you broke the handle. You broke the handle now. Now you don't get to play tug with the handle. That's how that works. Cattle dog. You have to work with your dog. You have to fulfill their drives. And you have to understand that what they are has so little to do with you as a handler. How you raise them, right? Loving them, showing them boundaries, all of that. Get that out of your mouth. Get that out of your mouth. It helps make them a stable dog, but all the behaviors that they naturally offer, it's all genetics. It was determined before they were even born. So, hope this video is helpful. Y'all got to see Jake break his favorite toy. I'm gonna have to order a new one. And I'll see you next time.